The plastic was a little too short. Getting ready to grind another project, prepare it for foiling. And as I get everything else squared away real quick, I'll just have a quick word from one of my sponsors. I should be doing a face shot. This is a protest. Do you see this video? Do you see this content? Do you see this land? This is Arkansas. This is 6,700 miles away from any war criminals that don't need to be supported. And I hereby voice my stance against whatever bullshit the governor thinks she wants to state. As I've spent my time wandering the woods, I tend to notice patterns in things. One time, I went to Boulder, Colorado, and went hiking along the trails up there at the Flatirons, and getting to hear the wind across those mountain faces like that. It was something to notate for people to experience, soaking in that sound, that feel like that. Walking through the woods, the wind in the pines does something similar so far as a response in the self, but the patterns I tend to notice, it seems like, I think I'd like to postulate consciousness is electric in nature. And I may not be able to fully articulate this, but in the analogous awareness that everything in nature is fractal, then perhaps we can draw all these things together. The wind in the pines being a prime example to start with. There is a static electricity type of interaction that occurs when these things happen. The wind, as it travels through those needles, creates a form of static electricity called a triboelectric effect. Whereas indeed in where the words go, it will conduct through the body of the tree down into the roots and through the forest network. And of course you got all the other trees doing this too. And it creates a sort of maybe a feedback loop with the mycological network underground as well. There could be all sorts of things to that. Speaking of being underground, the maybe in a karst region, a lot of people would notice if you're familiar with limestone surroundings. You can go off into the hills at night during certain seasons. For me, I noticed it early in the spring this year. There are little twinkling lights that'll show up. They look like fireflies. And, the busy mind, you just walk by and pass it. There's a difference to them. Fairy lights, as they may be referenced. This one takes a little more to flesh out, but I think a third point I'd like to bring up would be the anomaly, the experience, the thing that's crossed cultures, the archetype of the woman in white, or the lady of the waters. There is an ionic interaction that happens when the water travels through the capillaries underground, whether it's going from far beneath your feet and then coming down out of a hole on top of a mountain way above your head or not. There is a transaction of minerals and such that occurs, and they are, of course, of an electron displacement, so an electric transaction as well. Funny ways to word all that, I know. I like to keep it flowing, though. The karst and the limestone, the piezoelectric, the triboelectric, the ionic, all these things. If we look at and we notice, ever since being kids, you've been taught in school the water cycle and things like that, and how water travels through nature. You go steal it from the lake, you drink it, it does some magical stuff, and you give it back to nature. What if these and other components, may not have highlighted, are all part of a consciousness cycle? We've done what we can to destroy deism in this world, so to say. But it's like pervasive to this point still. We have what we refer to as Mother Nature. Certain texts will refer to her as Ashira or Gaia or all kinds of stuff like that. But it brings us right back to that archetypal concept. Through any history, we see a composite pattern of a female figure associated with a body of water, bringing intellect and such, bringing life. I'm not sure how to articulate any further than that. How exactly does somebody experience a visionary state and see these things, even without access to understanding, the cultural premises? They seem to be emergent of their own fashion. And that's where, somewhere in all of this, just as could be reflected and extrapolated through any, the electric universe theory, stuff like, it's where I'd bring full circle the premise that consciousness is electric in nature. Maybe to jump track slightly, consciousness is what brings itself to a point where it's aware of statements to begin with, establishing concepts as above, so as within, so without. And watching that phenomena like these can be emergent in nature just the same as awareness can be emergent within the self. We can dance this fractal poetry and see that perhaps this is tickling the toes of the concepts of all of our texts that state things about the balance of masculine and feminine in divinity, and finding the balance, the existence, the emergence in nature that is to be coexisted beside, instead of simply domineering and dominating everything. That exact etymology, maybe we'll just close it on this note. It can travel and segue and soliloquy into whatever. But I kind of subscribe to the idea that the corruption of linguistics has taken us a very long way. Dominion over the earth, I would very surely like to argue, probably originally existed as custodianship. And I know I'm of the mind to be out there and care for the trees. The peptides within me can convince me that what I'm doing is appreciated by them. And if I can convince myself of this reality, but these things are emergent the way they are, then perhaps I'm putting the cart before the horse, wasting the effort to run in circles arguing about the chicken or the egg to begin with. I think a stable framework is only necessary in carpentry and other structural applications. I'll be looking back on these videos myself as I progress through this channel and revisit things, reshape them, or just build upon them. Perhaps this is foundational enough. There's always a challenge to see things more than they are, deeper than they are, or even differently than how you think you see them anyhow. It looks to me that out of the chaos of nature, order is emergent. Order emerges on its own.